Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Solutions, Not Just Problems. We are your co-hosts, Vanessa K and B Money. B Money, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, enjoying this beautiful weather here in Atlanta, and ready to get started on a new show, Solutions Not Just Problems podcast. And we're looking forward to providing you with the content that we've been talking about for so long. We know that a lot of you have been hearing it for the past 6 months or so, about to do a podcast, about to a podcast. Well, guess what? It's here now. We're ready to go.
Here.
Yeah, ready to go.
Well, we're starting this series off. We're jumping right into relationships. So this first couple of weeks, we'll be talking about relationships, the ins and outs, and all the intricacies that go with it. But I did want to provide some background before we start because relationships have changed over the years. Are you noticing that, B?
Have I? Being a single guy, I've noticed quite a bit over the past 15 years, and mainly since I would say the what I call the Instagram era.
Yeah.
Okay, which to me, in a way, has kind of destroyed relationships that we once knew back, let's say in the 80s and 90s, and how we came up. But it is what it is. We're going to help you to navigate through it. We're going to do the best we can to try to give you some solutions to some of the problems that I know that we're all dealing with on a regular basis.
And the dynamics, we should let our viewers know there's two different dynamics here. We have B, who is single, and
Hmm.
I am married, both being the same age, but I'm married, so I'm totally out of this whole relationship, dating scene, and so I'm kind of blinded. And B, you had to educate me on some of it, where my jaw
Yeah,
was on the
yeah,
ground,
yeah.
right?
A lot of stuff you just was like oblivious to, like, really? And I'm like, you have no idea, how this thing has changed, like with the online dating, you
Yeah.
know, and just dating in general as a single person has become significantly difficult to be able to navigate through over, let's say, the past 10, 15 years. But you have your perspective as a married person, and I have mine as a single person. And I think bringing those two um, opinions to the show, I think is really going to add a lot of value.
Absolutely. So I had to start off doing some research before I could get into this, right? So I
Huh?
I figured out that there's 7 influences that have changed the course of dating.
Wow. Okay.
So one of them is the impact of online dating, right? There's a rise in online dating apps. Do you do online dating? Have you tried it?
Hell no.
What's your opinion? I mean, I myself,
I've been waiting for this.
oh,
Total waste of
so.
time. Let me tell you, I'm gonna tell you, let me back that up. I'm gonna date myself here. Do you remember Black Planet?
Mm-mm.
Black
Okay,
Planet,
tell me
something
Black Planet. What is that?
is like almost like the what was that? What was that? Space something. What was that? MySpace.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Yeah, this is like during the MySpace era.
okay.
Okay, and I remember Black People Meet.
Hmm.
That's what it's called. And then they had
I
another one
remember
called
that. Yeah.
Black Planet. And everything was black, 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 black. All right. Well, I tried it for a minute and kind of, conversed a little bit and reached out to a few. Just wasn't for me. So we're talking like probably 15 years ago when this was in existence, and never did it since. I haven't been on any of the dating apps. I mean, I haven't even met any on Facebook, Instagram, never mind any of the apps that are specifically for dating. I don't mess with them at all. But yeah, I haven't met anyone online like that.
Oh, why? Why? What turned you off about the online dating?
First of all, I think everybody online is kind of phony with it, and I'm a person like to see you in person. And I'm gonna tell you what happened too is a lot of women and men, I'm not gonna say just women now, but a lot of women out there are catfishing. Okay. So they're sending you a picture of someone who they used to be 15 years ago. Okay. And then you see the person, you know,
You see me laughing over here because I'm already forming my visuals.
you see the person for who they really are, and you're like, that's not you.
Right.
But and then, everybody says, oh, I like to go fishing and, I like to travel and shop and go to comedy shows. Everybody got the same thing. And my thing is, who are you really?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get to know who you are. So me sitting down at a coffee shop and kind of having a conversation openly is more my speed. You
Mm,
know, me sitting behind a computer and trying to get to know a female, that's not going to work for me.
right, right. Well, believe it or not, that was one of the top reasons, impacts, authenticity was a concern with online dating, that catfishing and not knowing who people are. We have it in the real estate industry as well, because, all of us realtors take pictures of ourselves. And then when you see the real person, it's not them.
Uh,
15 years later, but yeah, authenticity is one of the big impacts with online dating, or the negative, I should say, impacts of on.
mm,
Um, the other one is date what they call dating app fatigue. It's a sense
mhm.
of being online all the time, like there's just no end. Some of us are online for our jobs during the day, and that social media and being online can just filter the lines are blurred. Well, when is your personal time, and constantly being online?
I think online dating would be okay if it was just setting up for an actual date, for an
Mm.
in-person meeting, because I won't even call it dating, because we're going to talk about that in a minute, how I think dating is actually outdated to me. This is not necessarily happy days back in the 50s, where Potsy and Richie
Meet at the
was
hamburger
waiting,
shop.
at the ice cream shop, waiting for their date to come. This ain't that time now. You
Right.
know, whole different world that we're living in. And in fact, I was just looking at this video today, and it was crazy because this guy took a woman to um, what is it? What is that sandwich shop? Oh my God, the hamburger shop,
Good.
Smoke Shack or Shake Shack.
Shakes and Shack. Yeah, Shake Shack.
Oh, took the woman to Shake Shack, right? And she's grilling him about how dare he take her to Shake Shack. She's saying, look at me, you're going to take me to Shake Shack like she was, Halle Berry or something,
Do I
you
look
know.
like I eat
And
beef?
I'm saying, even if you are Halle Berry, who are you that you can't go to Shake Shack? And this man said, hey, I just dropped $50 on lunch. I mean? It's only lunch, you know what I mean? And she wasn't appreciative of it. And I'm saying to myself, nah, hell no, that's not going to work for me. You
Yeah.
know? And I'm pretty sure he either probably met her at a club or maybe he met her online. I don't know. But when he went on the actual date, she just was so turned off by the idea that this man would take her to Shake Shack. And I'm looking at it like, y'all are lost. You have no clue because it's no
More
longer even
concerned
about
about
getting,
the
but
money.
it's no longer even about getting to know a person anymore,
Right.
Vanessa.
That's what I was getting
You
ready to
know?
say.
It's really about where you taking me, what are we doing, how much money you spending, and it's like if you that person, imagine what it's going to be once we get to know each other and we're in a relationship. I just met you, and this is what you're showing me for the first time. Wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, it sounds like she was more interested in the cash, what he's
Yes.
spending in the materialistic part of it, as opposed to, is this an honest guy? Is this a guy that will, you know,
Well, is integrity even important anymore? And
take
how
it?
can you learn about a person's integrity online? When I'm going to show you the best person I can, you know, and I'm going to make everything look like I'm in this great catch, But a lot of times when you're face to face and you get a chance to talk to somebody, you can kind of tell by their body language. You can tell by, the eye contact, whether there's any type of, connection, you
Right.
know, where you can't really get that type of connection online, So that's
Okay,
why.
we're gonna break with the Shake Shack. So the shift in norms and values of relationships. This is the one that, right, B, when we were talking, I fell out, remember? Traditional
What
coding.
happened? What happened? You got to refresh my memory here to make sure.
the traditional marriage versus the modern marriage,
Oh
right?
man.
Traditional courting and marriage versus that modern marriage. Um, I'm I was just floored. I'm really not a fan of either one of them, to tell you the
Mhm.
truth. I'm a believer that marriage is ordained by God, and I don't want to sound preachy. This isn't a religious show, but I am a believer, and uh, the spiritual marriage is written right there in the Bible, how it should work. Traditional marriage, in my opinion, does mirror the spiritual marriage, but it's kind of biased towards men. I think
Mm.
that's, in my opinion, that's
Okay, give me an
me,
example. Give me
feminist.
an
I
example.
think it's a little biased, and
Because I think just the opposite. I think that really the traditional marriage really favors women. But
hmm,
go ahead. I want your opinion on that. I'm curious about that.
I just think that it's designed for it looks like the man goes out and works and he's the provider and the woman stays in the house. And the reason why I don't like that structure is because it evolved into that is the only way. That's the right way. Everything women couldn't work, they had a lot of their rights taken away from them.
Sure.
And I'm going back, years because this traditional marriage has been in existence for a while.
Hmm.
So, when I look back and I'm saying, okay, what about that woman that doesn't want to? She can do more than just manage a house. What about her dreams and aspirations? There was a time when women couldn't vote. We couldn't work. We were just tied to the house.
Hmm.
So, from that perspective, I could see why the feminist movement came out, and things have evolved. No, I think, it's going too far to the left, but yeah, that's my view on the traditional marriage.
I too am a Christian,
Mhm.
okay, and I'm not a Bible thumping, you know, going to church every Sunday person. I'm not going to be a hypocrite here,
Right,
but from what I've learned is that it's God, man, woman, and child.
right.
And what we've done over the years, we've kind of blurred everything,
Hmm.
gotten to the point where it's almost like, well, whoever's making the most money or has the most influence, or, we're no longer looking at that structure. And part of the problem is I don't think that men have necessarily been the leaders that they were in the past.
Hmm.
And then also from an economical standpoint, obviously it's a lot more expensive to maintain a household, okay, which has forced women to actually go into the house. I mean, forced women to actually go into the workforce, but it has also caused um, prices to rise, okay, and things to become more expensive. Because if you looked at it 40 years ago, or let's say even 50 years ago, when let's say 60 years ago, let's say in the 1950s, prior to 1960, okay, because the feminist movement started what, in the mid 50s or so, early to mid 50s, somewhere around there, and then started to take off during the 70s. Um, but if we're looking at, let's say, around, mid 50s or so, you really started seeing where the woman stayed at home for the most part. They might have had a profession like maybe working in a school or as a teacher or maybe nursing, those type of jobs, okay? More of in a supportive role. Now you have women who are actually taking on careers, going to college. As we know, most of the people in college right now, I think it's almost up to a 60-40 split where 60% of women are in college as opposed to 40% of men, you know, and they're taking on positions that are allowing them to earn a lot more money. And so with money, I guess, comes more prestige or power or influence or what have you. But I think that that has also impacted the roles that we have, like you were talking about earlier, the traditional roles that we've had in the past.
Right.
And we still need to look at it in terms of, okay, um, we have to have some kind of hierarchy in the household. Okay. Just like when you go to work, and this is one of the things that you see online a lot, where the woman is now going to work along with the man. So now we're on an equal playing field. So the man's coming home and saying, nah, that's not the case. I'm still the man of the house. Okay. So how do we resolve that issue? Because we remember the name of the show is Solutions, Not Just Problems.
Mhm.
What is something we need to look at in terms of how to resolve that issue? If let's say a woman's making 100,000, the man's making 60 grand, okay? And she comes in and say, "Hey, I'm the head breadwinner here, so I'm going to be the leader of this family." How do you resolve that issue?
In my opinion, should never be based on money. You got to take that money right off the table. I mean,
Okay.
whatever I make. So me and I'll use myself, my marriage as an example.
Hmm.
Money is never an issue. It goes into one pot, and what we both
Okay.
put into that pot contributes to the family or the household as a
Okay.
whole. So it doesn't matter if, you know, my husband brings in 100,000 and I bring in 50,000 or vice versa, right? It's
Okay.
all going into that pot. And here's another thing. When you try to do it that way, well, life's going to teach you differently because over
Mhm.
time, that's changed. So as much as we wanted it to be that way in the beginning, right? It's changed. There's been times in my relationship where I made more money. And so it varies. I think the key is man and woman need to sit down and figure out what works for them. Take the
Mhm.
money off the table and,
Mhm.
and put things in order that work for them because I don't think there's a blueprint for marriage. It's God didn't really give specifics. It wasn't do this, do that, do this. It was he just gave like an overview, and
Mhm.
I think we have to fit in there how we fit in and what works best for both that man and woman. I've seen men at home and being the at-home mom and the woman out working and this is 20 years
Yeah.
ago. And now
Yeah.
it was rare, right? But that couple that I've seen doing it, it worked for them and they were happy with it. It worked for them. Now, no one, that wasn't right or wrong. It just worked for them. And, so I don't think there's a model for, everybody has to, it's not a one size fits all. You got
Okay.
to work it out with each other.
So I'm gonna ask you a question right quick. So from a leadership perspective, is there anyone who is the leader of the family? Or is it we just gonna do this all willy-nilly and figure
Oh,
it
no,
out?
no, no. From a leadership perspective, like you said, if you're following the scriptural marriage, it's God, man, and woman, and then children, right?
Mhm.
However, um, what if the man's not a leader?
That's where you have some confusion,
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of women look at it like, okay, he's really not a leader. But then you have to think to yourself, did you choose the wrong man? Which is a whole different topic.
Right,
But
right,
at the end of the day, if you're choosing a man as a woman, why would you choose anyone who is not a leader?
right, right.
So it really wouldn't make much sense. I'm not a female, but if I were a female, one of the number one things I would be looking at is does he have leadership qualities, along with integrity, morals? Is he going to be a good father to my children?
Right.
All of those things. Is he going to be a good provider, protector? All of that would come into play. Okay. And if that is the case, then naturally, and this is just me, looking at it from a woman's perspective, if that is the case, why wouldn't she see him as being leader of the family? But yeah, you're right. I know women that are in relationships with men who are not leaders.
Hmm.
And that's where the confusion, like I said, comes in.
And what went wrong? Why are we not looking at that as women, as a whole, in general? Why are we not
Um,
looking at that? Why do I
because
hear money? Like, he has to make a certain salary as a qualification and not he has provider potential or
because I
he
think
has integrity. Wow, he's trustworthy, he's honest. What went
because
wrong?
I think we have an unrealistic expectation of what life is supposed to be about. And I think that we're too busy comparing ourselves to other people's lives who may be quote unquote doing better than we are. Okay. And I don't want to go into biblical terms, but comparing yourself to others is not wise. I believe it's the Apostle Paul that said that. Okay. And so when you're sitting here and you're comparing your husband or your wife to another man or another woman's husband or wife, okay, I don't think that's a good thing to do. And I think that too many of us want to live this lavish lifestyle. We want the $500,000 home. We want the Mercedes and the BMW and the driveway. We want the private school for kids. We want to go on the trips. We want to eat at Ruth Chris. We want all these things, okay? Instead of just saying, hey, how about if we just have a comfortable lifestyle where we have a roof over our head, you know what I'm saying? And we live in a safe environment and we're able to raise our children so that they can have opportunity, moving forward. And I don't think we look at it like that anymore.
Right.
You know, I think we're so busy looking at how people are living on what you just talked about a minute ago, social media.
Yeah,
Okay. And
that has a
why I
big
think,
part to do with it. 'Cause
yes,
that's all you see on social media.
yes,
This is the
yes,
lifestyle, but there's another life, there's the real lifestyle
yes.
outside of social media.
And this is where going back to what you were talking about earlier, which was the dating, the online dating, okay, becomes so difficult because you've got women out here and men, okay, who are looking at this lifestyle. They're trying to emulate that. And most of us are not in a position financially to be able to
Right,
do that.
right. Not even
What
close.
happens when you don't have the finances? Okay, what happens then? Now, if you sit there and you say, okay, if he's not making, let's say, 60 grand or 80 grand or whatever number it is, and now he's deemed what? A scrub?
Right,
He's not going to be a good provider. You're not going to have that type of lifestyle. And I understand things have become very difficult, from a financial perspective, especially over the past, let's say, 10 or 15 years. But what you were talking about earlier, if we take the money and put it into a pot, okay, and we share in that 100% as opposed to what some people are doing right now. This is another topic, which is this 50-50 nonsense, you know, which is each person is going in 50-50. Well, if you're married, okay, in my opinion, it should be 100 and 100.
I'm going to give 100% to my marriage.
Exactly. And I think those are the marriages that are more successful, to be honest with you. So whether you're living on $100,000 a year salary or median income or what do they call it, family income, let's say,
Hmm.
or if you're living on a $250,000 income, family income, you should be able to make it work. Okay, you should find a way to make it work and then get to the point where you're supporting one another to where you're now able to increase that income. Okay, but we're living in a society now where men are expected already to be coming in making 100K plus before they can actually become the leader
Right.
of the family. It's like, so we're basing everything on finances. Okay,
What about the growth? Like, what about the growth in marriage? Marriage is a lifetime. Like people grow. Like you started to say you need to come together, right?
yes,
Do everything you got 100%, but then grow together. Like, it's like we want to be 0 to 100, you know, at the very, it's all about growth and
so
forming
so
that together.
so now we're talking about process.
Hmm.
And we're talking about having to wait and having to be patient and having to come up with a strategy and having to implement the strategy and having to work together. Okay? No, I want this thing to be ready made.
Right.
Come in, we already need to be having the BMW and Mercedes in the driveway with the $500,000 home. We're not going to build up to that. How dare you tell me I got to live in an apartment?
Yeah.
In a neighborhood that's maybe just okay.
Right.
Okay. It's not acceptable to a lot of people. And
Right.
once again, is the problem is that when you're comparing yourself to other people and you're trying to live up to other people's expectations, that's when you run into problems.
Mm.
And one of the things I learned at an early age, Vanessa, and I was just thinking about this today, as early as 10 years old, is I never really gave a damn about what other people were doing with their life. It didn't really
Right.
matter to me.
That's right. When you can get to
That,
that point, just know where your life is going, who you are.
exactly. Exactly.
So what's becoming though acceptable is the diverse relationships and structures, cohabitation, no marriage at all, open relationships, polyamory,
Oh God. What the heck is
truples,
that?
truples.
But yeah, yeah, that's the one I was looking at earlier. I'm like, what the heck is a truple? But we go through it, not to cut you off.
That's the three. The
Huh?
three. The three. It's not triples. I think it's called truples. When there's three in the relationship. It may
That's
be
just
a man living with two women or the women living with two men.
really.
And there's the
Oh,
polyamory.
okay. See, eh,
I was just watching a show the other night and
yep.
it's on Prime and the children are growing up with two men, two gay men are raising a boy and a girl. And
Mhm.
the kids are teenagers, and the teenagers, the two fathers are having a problem with their own relationship, right? So they're trying to protect the children, and the kids came right out and said, "Dad and Dad." We don't have
Okay.
a problem with this. You're making such a big deal out of this. I mean, we go to school with, we're not even the abnormal ones. We have two dads, but yeah, we got friends that are living with a triple or whatever, polygamy relationship. And
Hmm.
it's like, wow, like the younger people are accepting of that. That's not, it didn't make any, but it was the funny part was how the parents, they were having more of the problem with it than the children were. Or
Hmm.
a dads, I should say. They're trying to protect the children. The children are like, it is what it is.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't live in that world, Vanessa. So to me, that's not even something that I would even take into consideration. But what you were talking about earlier, which is the open relationship, you
Mhm.
know, which I find to be odd because I couldn't see myself sharing a woman with another man and then being committed to that woman in any, what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I think that we're trying to go outside, like we talked about earlier, what was intended, and we're trying to create our own way of doing things. And I think that is what is getting us into trouble.
Mhm. There's
Now,
also a focus on equality now, gender
okay.
equality, sharing the responsibilities. Like I said, with more women, like we discussed earlier, with more women out there working, it's becoming more common to share the responsibilities, and a mutual respect.
Okay. And what do we mean by mutual respect? Because that is something that I need some clarification on. Give me an example of what you would call mutual respect. Because if we're looking at it from a leadership perspective, right? And let me ask you this. Does that mean everything that I do or every decision I make, I need to make sure I clear it by you first?
You didn't have to. I mean,
Does
that's not respect to me. That's
okay, does that mean that I'm never able to criticize or never able to give advice as to what I think is in our best interest as a couple and as a family?
mm-mm.
So give me an example when you say mutual respect, because I've always had mutual respect. I've always respected women, and they've always done the same with me. So I've never really had a problem when it came to respect. Now, what I've had an issue with a lot of times is dealing with, and it is my pet peeve, is women that complain a lot, you know, constantly complaining about things that are really not that important.
Right.
Okay. Like toothpaste, cap off the toothpaste, you know what I mean? Sock on the floor, that type, you know what I mean? It's just like
Pick up that sock, please.
pick and choose your battles. You
Right.
know what I mean? But if it's something that's substantial and really, something that's causing a problem, obviously you're going to sit down and talk about it and have respect.
Mhm.
But, um, so give me an example of what you would consider to be mutual
Well,
respect.
I think mutual respect is, like you said, you're able to sit down and communicate without yelling, screaming at each other, right? Set boundaries. Sometimes you have, in my relationship, we have boundaries. We're grown adults, right? But we still need boundaries. My husband and I call each other out of their name, even when we're in an argument, even when we're heated. That's one thing we don't do is call each other out of their names. We set some boundaries.
Absolutely.
Don't
Absolutely.
raise don't raise your voice. You know,
Mm,
you have a point, you can now, me being a female, my voice
mhm,
elevates a little bit, but my husband knows how to bring that back down. I'm conscious of it, you know.
mhm,
Another thing is money, right? So
mhm,
I don't feel like I'm in bondage and every time I want to do something I have to go ask with my husband, and he the same way. He doesn't have, but we do
mhm,
have boundaries there. If it's a big ticket item, like we're gonna spend $1,000, we might want to let each other know, because
sure.
it is gonna affect the budget, right? So it's a matter of sitting down, putting those boundaries in place, and then making sure that you're following them even when you're alone. Like if I'm out, I have to represent myself as a married woman. I can't be
Mm,
out there, wearing certain items in certain
mm.
places like I'm single. So there's a respect that I have for my husband even when I'm not with him.
Ooh, that's for a whole new topic right there. And I think we have one coming up pertaining to that issue too. And that is something that really causes a problem with a lot of men. And you know what's really sad is a lot of men have to eat that. They have to just what they call suffer in silence because if you say something, then you're seen as being what?
The man, if the man says something, he's seen as
Yeah,
being the, I don't know which way you're going.
controlling.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
you see what I'm saying? So there's a fine line between, once again, you stepping in as the leader, okay, and you sitting here trying to give constructive advice, as opposed to someone saying, "Well, you won't let me be who I am." Okay, well, if you wanted to be who you were, you know what I mean? You probably should have stayed single, to be honest with you, because as a man, I've had to make adjustments too. And I think that's one of the things that women don't really look at when it comes to relationships. Men automatically know the adjustments we need to make.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But a lot of times it's difficult for you because women want to maintain a single mentality. Okay. But at the same time, have that commitment of marriage. And that is another topic
I'm
that
not
we'll
so
talk.
sure if it's all the women, Brian.
Sorry.
I'm not so sure if it's all the women, you know.
I'll be
Men,
honest with
men
you.
have been known for out there cheating
Oh,
and, you know, out there without their wives, and men have held that title for years.
did you say cheating?
Uh-huh, out there
I
cheating.
think you'd be, I think you'd be very surprised when you go look at the statistics and see the number of women that cheat in comparison to men. And then you also find that most men who are married, and keep in mind, we're talking about married men, don't cheat. Okay.
Hmm.
So
That's
even
true.
if it's, huh?
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So even if it's somewhere, let's say 60 to 35%, let's say, 60% of men maybe have stepped out to 30%. I don't know what the number is exactly because I haven't
I'll
looked
have
that
to
up.
look that number up.
Yeah, but I can tell you right now, women are catching up to men. Okay.
You might be right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Okay, that's going to be it. We're going to look that up for next week. We're going to bring
okay.
that to our viewers,
All right. All
statistics,
right.
men and women.
Because, and I'm not, a lot of times people look at it like, oh, you're downing women, and this. No, it's not about downing women or putting them down or making it so that you're a misogynist or you hate women. No, it's about identifying things and calling out things that we see.
Right.
You know, and that's another thing that's become difficult is for us to be honest as men and express our opinion without being called a misogynist, a narcissist, or what's the other one? Controlling, you know, or you're jealous. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, that's not what it's about. If you make us feel comfortable, you're probably not going to see a lot of that.
Right. Right.
Right? So a lot of it has to do with we have responsibility. Just like as a man, I have responsibility to carry myself in a certain way in public so that my spouse, she would feel comfortable, or my, girl, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so we both have that responsibility. Like you said, when you step out, you represent that other person.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to break right there for a moment and we'll be right back. So, B Money, another thing that affects relationships nowadays and it's increasing is mental health issues. You know, with
Hmm.
all the mental health issues coming on the spotlight, we're becoming more and more in tuned with mental health. And partners, marriages, husband and wives find themselves taking care of somebody that may have mental health issues. Like for instance, my mother-in-law has dementia. She's living with us, and my husband and I are caretakers for her. But what
Hmm.
about the spouse that has mental health issues? The spouse that goes to war and comes back with
Hmm.
PTSD, right? Or bipolar becomes a thing, or Alzheimer's, dementia. What happens with that spouse, that's caring for that other spouse?
You know,
Um,
I too are dealing with some family members who are dealing with dementia and and mental health issues. And I think just about all of our families, it's kind of like drugs, and alcoholism. It touches just about every one of us, and just about every family. Um, it's a real touchy situation when it comes to relationships. And I think obviously once you find yourself in a situation like that where someone then confides in you and tell you that they've been dealing with some issues or what have you, and maybe you didn't know about it. I'm assuming that if you knew about it from the jump, if someone that you prospective relationship or prospective spouse or significant other, I'm sure if you knew about it from the jump, you probably would go the other way. Okay. But I guess what you're talking about is somebody who's dealing with someone who maybe is going through some things, you know, and it's now manifesting itself. Okay.
Mhm.
Like I said, came back from the armed services or maybe went through a traumatic experience and now needs assistance. Um, I'm big that if you need it, to go get therapy,
Mhm.
to go get the help that you need. Because I think there are people out there who are equipped to be able to help you to manage, you know, and get through those hard times. I have been a person where I've never been to any type of counseling in my life, um, and there are times when I, be honest with you, that I wish I could have, and that's just as simply sit on the couch for 30 minutes to run my mouth. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Not necessarily because I felt like, oh, this is out of control, but don't get me wrong, things do get out of control, and sometimes life can become overwhelming. And having a professional sit there that can help you navigate through those things, it may not even be long term, maybe for a few months.
Right.
You know,
Two
I
weeks.
think
I mean, that's perfectly normal. Things come.
yes, I've seen where it's helped people quite a bit, you know, in my family, friends. I know people who are suicidal, who no longer feel that that's an option anymore, just by them sitting down and having an opportunity to speak to a professional. So yeah, I'm 100% for it.
And I want to emphasize it's not just the person who's going through it, it's the spouse, that there are resources for the spouses or the caretakers, because they need help too. You get into when you're in that type of environment, the walls start to close in and you start to feel like you're the only one that's going through this.
Mm.
Sometimes the caretaker needs someone to talk to. So we're going to put in the our description box some resources where for mental health where people can tap into and get some counseling and some answers in that arena.
And later on down the road, I mean, we're kind of touching on it a little bit and just kind of giving our opinion. But later on down the road, when we start to have guests come on the show, we like to get a professional that can come on and talk specifically about these issues. We don't want to pretend like they're experts. This is a very sensitive, very touchy situation. I can just tell you from my experience how I've seen people be able to kind of navigate and get through those situations by actually speaking to a professional.
Absolutely. And I think it's May is Mental Health Month. So we'll
Okay.
we'll be addressing that in
Okay.
detail. Individualism and self-discovery is another thing that impacts. We're in this arena now where a lot of people are starting to come out and do their own businesses. The internet changed a lot for a lot of people. It opened up doors, and people are growing. They're starting to look at themselves, and how does that affect marriage? Right, that can have an impact on
Mhm.
marriage. Me myself, a prime example. Um, right?
Mhm.
couple of years ago, a few years back, I was, working in banking. I had a 9 to 5, right? And I was married, and my husband's clearly the leader of our house, right? But now I've come out and evolved into this, I have my own business, a realtor, kind of almost like a boss lady, right? During the day. And now at night, the roles change.
Mm.
But
Mm.
I did a lot of self-discovery over these past 5 years, right? I've turned into another person. And I know my husband's like, who did I marry? Who is this person?
Mhm.
So that has an impact on marriage too. Something that's totally, this isn't who we was when we first got married, right? So yeah, that can have a big impact.
Yeah, because we evolve over time, and what was good enough maybe 20 years ago may not be now, especially when children are out of the house,
Right.
you know. and now you're starting to say, okay, besides me being a mom or perhaps a husband or a wife, how can I, as an individual, get to the point where I'm able to accomplish some of the goals I want to accomplish,
Right.
And I think one of the things is that um, I think talking about it, ahead of time,
Mhm.
and really have coming into agreement, um, I think is really important, but also supporting the person and knowing that people want to be able to, especially in today's modern times, both men and women want to be able to have lives where they feel fulfilled,
Right. Right.
and they want to have a sense of purpose,
Hmm.
you know. And it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're 18 or 80 years old, everyone wants to feel like they matter.
Hmm.
Okay. And I think if you can support whatever someone's doing, as long as it's positive, as long as someone's not trying to be on the pole or,
That's
no,
my
I'm
new
serious.
expression.
No, but I'm serious. As long as it's reasonable, and it's not taking away from the family, it's not getting to the point where you're seeing undue or unnecessary stress, uh, or undue burden on that person, then yeah, I think for the most part, we should be supportive of our individual goals and then be able to come together. And this is not just in a marriage, but also any relationship. Where you're a couple, you're trying to grow together because keep in mind, and we talked about this earlier, traditional marriage is not for everybody.
Right.
Not everybody is interested in marriage. I, for one, have never really, not saying I didn't want to get married ever, but as I looked at it, it just wasn't for me.
Right.
Okay. I
That's
look
the
at,
limit to traditional marriage and to the traditional marriage. It doesn't allow for growth. It's you're right there. Like that man is the provider.
I think it,
And maybe it's my perception of it, but that's how I see that traditional
I,
marriage. I'm thinking of the Joan Cleavers,
No,
that type of.
I think it does. What I don't think a traditional marriage is really for is for a career woman. I think that when you're someone who's looking to have a career where the majority of your time is taken away from the household, away from the husband, and he no longer sees you as what they call a helpmate, okay? That's when you start to, have some confusion. But if someone is doing something maybe part-time or maybe has a 9 to 5, and she still is able to maintain those same responsibilities, duties, whatever you want to call it, I don't think it has a problem. Once it starts to interfere, or you come home because you're the CEO of such and such, and now you're bringing that same, CEO mentality back home, that's when I think most men say, "Oh, hold on a second,"
Right.
you know?
And women have to be careful with that. You
And
know, if you're in
it's
that traditional relationship, because that's a challenge for me. I have to really watch myself and check myself coming in the door.
it's it definitely is tough because now, like what like you were talking about, the mutual respect,
Mhm.
us seeing as us as equals, the whole partnership thing, which is another conversation we need to have. Okay, and I'm not going to tell you. You probably can guess how
Mhm.
what I think about the whole partnership thing, but that's for another day.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that we're putting so many different labels and we're going against tradition so much that
Right.
it's now confusing everybody. And
Exactly.
as a man, what I don't think women understand is, yeah, it may be easy for you because now, hey, everything's wide open. But
Hmm.
as a man, okay, in some ways, we can feel emasculated or feel like, okay, what's my role as a man?
Right.
How do I still maintain my masculinity, which has now become a word that in some ways is kind of toxic to some people, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's this balancing act that men have to have between being masculine and not being seen as too soft, but also having compassion, empathy, caring, support, you know, something that we never really had to do, let's say 40, 50 years ago. It's not something our fathers and grandfathers had to do,
Right.
So I think that we assume that, okay, this is the way the world is, and you just need to get over it, okay, and just do it. It's like, nah, it doesn't work that way.
We're
Not
almost
with
emasculating the man now.
I'm sorry.
Almost emasculating the man now. you know.
Well, it can be if you get to the point where you start to see where, okay, I no longer respect you as the leader of the household.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or I no longer respect you as a man. There's no difference between a man and a woman anymore.
Right.
Okay. It's just we're just people. You realize that, right?
Mhm.
We're just people. There's no role, there's no gender, we're just people.
Right.
And it's difficult for men to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times what people don't realize, because I look at the internet, I look at it every morning. I'm constantly looking at content, okay, which is one of the reasons why I decided I wanted to do do a podcast. One of the reasons why we talked about it is because I saw so many people and so many men that were having a difficult time, you know, being men, and as a result, this bubbled up over the
Yeah.
past, let's say, 8 to 10 years and produced Donald Trump. Okay, and we're not going to go into a big political thing, but no, I'm telling you, and a lot of people don't understand this. There's an underground thing called the manosphere out there, where men are talking to men, and we're talking about these issues,
Yeah.
right? And it never made it to mainstream media.
Mm.
But there were a lot of young men out here, especially between the ages of, let's say, 18 and 28, that felt left out. Okay. There were a lot of older men who maybe were in traditional jobs where they were plumbers, electricians, this and that, where they didn't feel they were getting the respect that they deserved. And as a result, it built this whole underground called the manosphere, which, like I said, the media didn't really catch on to. And as a result, Donald Trump understood this. And he understood, oh, okay, let's go after the men. Let's go after what he calls real men.
Mm.
Okay. So it's a real that, and that's for another day. That's for another
We
show.
don't have to get into that one because
Yeah,
that was interesting to hear. Was Manosphere, you said?
yes, yes. It's an underground, like you've heard about beta males and alpha males and the red pill and all that type of stuff. It has been going on. The Kevin Samuels of the world, this stuff has been going on for the past. It's not new. This is 20 years. This is 20 years. And it's become increasingly more popular. Let's say over the past, let's say 5 or 10 years, especially during the pandemic, when we had a lot of time to listen to a lot of content. You know, a lot of young men and men that felt left out were gravitating towards this manosphere,
Hmm.
and they were starting to develop their own philosophies of what life should be and how they're being cheated and they're being mistreated. And it really you wasn't going to see this on The View. And if you
Mm.
did see it on The View, they talked about it for a minute. It was probably negative, and they moved forward, not realizing this is a real issue in
Problem.
this country,
Yeah.
huh?
This is a problem.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it wasn't just white men, black men, Hispanic men, Asian men. It really created some issues. And be honest with you, there were some women too who maybe had some traditional values who felt, who kind of sided with those men,
Mm.
and that's why when you look at, if you go look at the numbers, and I have a chart for it too about who voted for who in the last election, okay? And we now know that I believe more than 50% of white women voted for Donald Trump.
Hmm.
Okay, along with more than 50% of white men. Why? Because a lot of them sided with him. But also, we had a huge increase in black men. We had a huge increase in Hispanic men because they too felt left out.
Mm.
But like I said, this is for another time, and but it's something that we really need to have an understanding about because I think it will help us moving forward long term.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think that sums it up for us. And in summary, we just have to find and form partnerships where we support individuals, each other, their in aspirations and their values.
I
That's how I
agree.
would end this one. Keep your eye on your partner and support your partner. Do what works for you and him and keep everybody else out of it, or you and her, but keep everybody else out of it.
hmm And I think communication is key. Um, and I think listening to the other person, but not just listening, but taking action,
Hmm.
you know. And one of the things that we've lost the art of is apologizing, you know. So if you make a mistake, don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I made a mistake.
Right.
Let me apologize," so you can move forward. That's not often easy for people to do.
Mm.
I've never really had a problem apologizing, say I made a mistake, and moved forward, especially if I looked at myself and say, I wasn't really too cool the way you handled that, bro. You got
Right.
to go and apologize. Not to say that I'm perfect or anything. I mean, I've done it and probably done things and didn't apologize, you
Hmm.
know. But I think that it goes a long way when you have empathy for other people. Um, but the other thing too is besides, apologizing and having empathy, I think we should be allowed to have or to ask the tough questions and have these difficult discussions without bringing our emotions into the discussion, you
That's
know?
part of being married, that spouse should be that person that you can do that to. That's creating that safe environment for your
Yes.
partner, right? Your partner should be able to come to you. And I mean, I know sometimes it's it may be the time of the day. We all have bad days or whatever, but overall, that space should be safe for your partner to come and speak to, because who else are they going to talk to?
This has always been my philosophy, right? Especially when it comes to relationships. If you genuinely want to see that other person happy, right? I think everything else pretty much takes care of itself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly.
You know, like if you genuinely support what that person's doing, you want to see them enjoy their life and have a fulfilled life and be able to feel like, you know what, my life has some meaning. I'm able to accomplish some stuff. I can go to my spouse. I can, bounce things off of that person, or your significant other, whatever you want to call it. Hey, I think that really can change your life. You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, well, I think that's a wrap today, B Money.
That was quite a
Um,
bit for a show. I ain't gonna lie.
yeah, that was quite a bit. So,
Yeah.
and there's more to come. We have a lot to say.
Oh, there's plenty more, and this was kind of PC today, and we're gonna try to keep it PC. But hopefully, you guys enjoyed the show, and please don't forget to uh, subscribe to the channel. And that information will be at the end here. And you can see our website back here, snjppodcast.com. You can go on it, click on there, bring you right to the YouTube channel. You can go ahead and subscribe to our channel. And that will allow you to get the content on a regular basis. And then maybe you'll decide you want to share and comment as well because we want to hear from you and hear what you have to say and hear what you think about the content that we're producing. And thanks for showing up and look forward to you next time. And keep in mind, the show takes place every Thursday at 3 o'clock. Okay, it will be uploaded to YouTube at that time every Thursday
Till
at 3.
next time, stay motivated, viewers.